Welcome to the Bulletproof Cashflow podcast, the go-to place to gain financial freedom through real estate investing. Here we interview investors, mentors, and entrepreneurs who share their secrets and advice to help you build passive income. Let's get into the show.
Hey everyone, this is Agostino. The ability to sell yourself to brokers, investors, and sellers is absolutely paramount in this business. By focusing on this very important aspect, you can get more deals in your pipeline and raise more capital that you need to get deals done. And while we like to buy things, no one likes to be sold to. Well, today's guest understands this and has a very unique way to sell. He is a best-selling author, a sales trainer, and marketing expert that has close to 3 decades of experience in the world of sales, consumer marketing, content creation, and much more. He's also an expert at the art of inherent human behavior. Today, he helps teams improve their sales performance and improving their sales concepts as well. He is the author of the best-selling book, The 7 Secrets to Selling More by Selling Less. With all that, I'd like to welcome my good friend, Allan Langer, to the show. Hey, Allan, thanks for coming on, man.
Hey, Agostino, thanks for having me.
Excellent.
I like your jacket.
Thanks. I like yours too. Well, if you like what Allan has to say, you can reach him via his website at allanger.com. And if you like our content, please don't forget to leave a comment and rate the show. Finally, if you text the word freedom to 202-410-4202, you get a free ebook, The Bulletproof Guide to Finding a Broker. Okay, Allan, maybe tell the listeners about how you got your start in this whole sales thing. Like, how did it all begin?
It's an interesting story. So right out of college, I was a big sports fan, and I got into sports public relations and marketing. I was a very young age. I worked for Montclair State University, New Jersey, and they threw me into the fire. And they wanted me to do stats and everything, and then I had to pitch stories to the newspaper. So that was sort of my first foray into selling. You had to convince a newspaper or an editor that they should do a story about this athlete or this team or whatever. That turned into fundraising. I wound up at Columbia University in New York City as the associate athletic director and did all that. But I was realizing that I was pretty good at what I did, but my salary stayed the same. They just pay you base salary. There's no incentive. There's no commission. I remember spending about a year and a half working on this one very, very rich alum who wanted his name on a softball stadium. And once I got the commitment to do that, and it was about a year and a half worth of work of dinners and lunch and golf and everything. He makes the commitment, and my boss at the time's like, I went in there expecting like, all right, here's a 2-week vacation. Here's something for all your hard work. And he just slapped me on the back and said, nice job, go get the next one. That's when I realized, I'm like, you know what? I need to get into actual selling. So I got into the construction world, in-home selling, just kind of by accident. And I started selling sunrooms, and then I got work for a pretty large home improvement outfit selling siding and windows. But you learn to cut your teeth in one-on-one selling and business to consumer in their homes it's not an easy sale situation. And fast forward almost 30 years, 26 years to be exact, I realized that what I was doing was not what they were training. See, the problem is any organization, it's not a problem, but it's the reality of the world. Any organization you join, any sales organization or company you join as a salesperson will train you on their philosophy and on their procedure. They train you the sales pitch. And the problem is the rep then follows the sales pitch when they meet with customers. And that company usually is okay with a 30% close. Like, you know what, if our team is closing 30% on the leads that we generate for them, we're going to be a successful company. And I always looked at that. I'm like, let's look at it from the other side of the glass. If we saw 100 people this week and 70 of them told us no, how is that successful? 70 people out of 100 said no to your salespeople. So I started doing other things besides the sales pitch. Really not rocket science, just becoming a human being and listening and these techniques that I was kind of doing without thinking about them, and then realized that now I'm closing at 70% and everyone's closing at 30. What am I doing differently? A few years back, about 4 or 5 years ago, my current boss, or my boss at the time, said to me, I offered my help to him. I'm like, listen, we got some reps here that are closing 20%. Let me help them. And he said to me, I'll never forget this. He goes, no, I don't want you to touch them. I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, you might mess them up. I'm like, mess them up. They're closing 20%. How can they get any worse? And he said, what you do can't be trained. He goes, you're just a field salesperson. You're good at what you do, but it's not trainable. And I kind of took that as a challenge to say, you know what I do can be trained. And I started coming up with what I actually did, and I wrote it down. And that was the genesis of the book that I wrote, The 7 Secrets. So that's sort of like the background of where I am today.
Interesting. So if you were to talk about some of the, just share some of these secrets, because I think this sounds very interesting, because you're absolutely right. There's typically a person with a script making a phone call, maybe even trying to raise money for an investor, for instance, and they're given a script by someone. Here, listen to this, or here, read this off when they call in.
Right.
And from my perspective, having been doing this for a while now, to me, it seems that if you're not really solving their problem, then it doesn't matter what you say. It's just words coming through a phone. That's all it is, right? I mean,
yeah, it's words coming through a phone, and it's if it's about you, if the customer or the prospect it feels like it's about you, they're never going to listen to you.
That's right.
You have to get to it's about them as quickly as possible. Yeah. And it's amazing once you do that, and you can generate that feeling from a prospect who has been talked to by another 100 people, which was he didn't get that feeling from, or she didn't get that feeling from. You all of a sudden rise to the top immediately, because they get the feeling, they may not even think it, could be subconscious, that this person's actually listening to me, and he's not in it for himself. He's in it to solve my problem. He's in it for my benefit, not for their. Anytime you go into I would tell every rep, if you go into a sales situation and all you're thinking about is making the sale, you're always going to be a mediocre salesperson. You can't be thinking about the sale ever. You always have to be thinking about the customer and how you can help them and solve their problem, or whatever you're there for. It can never be about you. You know, I wrote a blog once. It says sales is not about numbers. It's not about hitting your quota. And I got a lot of pushback from these typical, money number crunching sales managers out there saying, yes, it's always about the numbers. I'm like, yeah, what's your team closing? 28%? So it's not about the numbers. It's about helping the person in front of you.
100%.
So always think about that before you have your conversation.
Yeah. Well, I think that in general, people like to think that they're logical. We're logical, and that's it, right? We operate from a place of logic. And I think what many people don't realize is that we actually operate more from a place of emotion than logic. And just you pointed out, if they feel that you are in it just for yourself, as opposed to taking care of that person, they don't really care what you have to say. It's as simple as that.
100%
right?
of the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're never going to care about anything you say, and even if you go back now, I know you're in a kind of a different area, because you may not have a sales pitch, or maybe you do. Maybe you do have. There are people listening who have a script, and my advice is ditch that script. Just listen to the customer. You're obviously going to need to know the process of the company you're working for. You're going to need to learn their sales process. But what really separates the good reps from the average reps is knowing what point or what tool to use in your toolbox. You can't use every tool. I go on companies hire me to go on ride-alongs with their reps to see what they're doing. And so many of them are so anxious to get to everything in their toolbox. They want to say every single thing that the company does. And you know what? The customer only wanted to hear 2 things. And you said the 2 things, but then you went on to another 10 things that the customer could care less about. They're nodding, they're being polite, but they're gone. You lost them 25 minutes ago. So what gets you really good is to pay attention and figure out what are those things that they really want to hear. And then you stop talking. Let them sell to you. Let them sell your service to themselves, because once they start convincing themselves that you're the person they want to do business with, the person they want to sell the property to, whatever, shut up. That's it. The sale's done. Just go from there. Don't keep overselling. Overselling is another enormous problem in sales today.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And just for the listeners out there, and correct me if I'm wrong, Allan, but overselling is basically getting an understanding for what they want, and you address it, and you actually give them the solution, and then you just keep on talking and going past it. And then you end up losing them. That's overselling.
That's completely overselling. You feel like, oh, I didn't mention features 6, 7, and 8. I better talk about that, when they don't care about 6, 7, or 8.
Right.
What you just said, they just kind of gave you that little commitment. Here's the thing. I did a little video tip on this the other day, actually, and it's something that I kind of take for granted. But I was on a ride along, like I was just mentioning, and I was with a young rep, and he was a disaster. The customer was getting so uncomfortable. So I kind of slid in there and kind of took over. And the customer at one point, about 30 minutes later, said to me, "What would you do? What would you choose?" To me, the customer asked me that question. And I realized I got such a warm feeling, like, wow, she actually trusts me to the point that she's asking me what I would buy. Like, what if I had her money, what would I do in her situation? That is the ultimate situation you want to be in. And I call that a trust question, because you get people say, oh, you got to get to buying questions. You got to understand buying questions. And that's true. But sometimes buying questions are questions to alleviate anxiety or just to kind of get you to the end of the presentation. You want to get to a trust question. And when someone says to you, what color would you choose? Or would you buy building A or buy building? If they're asking you that, you not only have a customer, but you have a customer that is implicitly trusting you to give you that answer, because now they feel like, I really like this guy. I can ask him what he's going to do with my money. And that's really where you want to get to.
100%. I mean, because ultimately they have to know you, like you, trust you.
There you go.
the three things.
Yeah.
The big three. Yeah. They got to do all three. And yes, if you spend enough time with them, it doesn't have to. And the thing is, I think another thing that people often mistaken, and I think, and you hit on this, was that it isn't like you're going to make one phone call, close immediately. I guess it depends on what the sale is. But in our case, and when we're, say, raising capital, it's a long-term thing. You're establishing a connection, they're getting to know you, you're getting to know them. And it may take months before or maybe even longer than that, maybe even years before they actually invest anything with you. It's a long-term thing. I guess it really depends on what it is you're selling, right?
And the other thing is, I'm on LinkedIn all the time. That's where you and I met. And it drives me crazy when I get these messages that I don't know this person whatsoever. They send me a 4 or 5 paragraph message, and then they say, schedule an appointment. I'm like, schedule an appointment? Who are you? Like, what do you mean schedule an appointment? You need to establish that you have some value for them before you ask for anything. They need, if you're making phone calls, establish value first. Don't just say, hey, you want to buy this building? You can't just go right into that. You have to get content out there, get some stuff out there that establishes value, where the person's like, you know what, I think I want to listen to what this guy has to say. And then it's kind of a soft romance to the point where you then start asking for things. But you want to provide value first. You can't just go right in and say, hey, this is me, schedule an appointment, let's do some business within the first phone call. That's just not going to work.
Exactly. So do you have any, say, words of advice? Let's say, for instance, we're trying to raise capital or getting the word out about a potential deal or some deal we may do in the future. We don't even have a deal just lined up yet. So we're just, we're in the early stages of getting people to know who we are, to raise capital. And we're doing a cold calling scenario. What sort of thing would you say if you had a list of investors, wealthy individuals that have expressed interest in investing in a deal of some kind?
Well, I mean, if you've got that list, I think you need to soften the edges a little bit by providing content. Get them connected and follow them on LinkedIn. Start sending out some stuff that is really going to that might be interest of them. Real estate related or venture capitalist related things that they want to start seeing you as the expert. They want to perceive you as the expert. Remind me to tell you a great perception story, but I would start that way. Like, go to your list and get out there first before you start asking for anything. Because that's the problem with cold calling, is there's no value built up. So that's why cold calling has a 4% success rate, because it's just a numbers game. You're just calling and calling and calling, and you might get 2 or 3 people out of 1,000 that are going to say yes, or at least get you to the next stage. You want to soften that a little bit so they at least, oh, I know, I heard of these guys. You're top of mind. I saw them on LinkedIn, or I saw their webpage. And then obviously they're going to go to your website. And then here's a quick piece of advice. I give this talk a lot, and it's about the front of your website has to be very, very clear. All your marketing stuff has to be really, really clear, but your website in particular, that's where people are going to go immediately, has to answer these 3 questions within the first 10 seconds. If it doesn't answer these 3 questions in the first 10 seconds, they're going to go to a different website. Question number 1, what do you sell? Question number 2, how do I get it? And question number 3, how's it going to make my life better? If I'm looking at your website, I got something from you, I got a blog post. I'm like, these guys are interesting. Click on the website. I need to see, what do I sell? My offer, my service. How do I get it? Call to action. How's it going to make my life better? Oh, wow, they're going to help me make some money. If that isn't all on the first page of your website, they're gone. So keep that in mind. So many people, going back to the sales pitch, they want to throw everything that they do at you on the first page of the website. And all you're looking at, it's like walking into a department store and having every sales rep from every department walk up to you at the same time. You're like, whoa, you're turning around and leaving. You need to be very, very clear about that stuff. So that's what I would do. That's how I would start is get your content out there and then be very, very clear once you start talking to them on what you do and how you can help them, what's going to make their life better.
I love it. Because, well, here's the other thing. Just the other day, we had some leads pulled, and I don't do the cold call thing. I agree with you. It's one of those things that this is a relationship business, right? That's why we create content like this to help other people improve their sales game, improve the way that they buy assets, improve their mindset, all these different things. So we're trying to create value for other people is what we do. But in the same token, let's say there is a list. So it sounds to me like another alternate, just to incorporate what you just said. Let's say there's a list of people. Instead of just cold calling them, we friend them on LinkedIn. Mm-hmm. and just say, hey, you look kind of interesting, or whatever the case may be, like put a soft opener and leave them alone. Mm-hmm. Don't send them a message immediately. Right. Instead, create value. Mm-hmm. Create value for them. That's the key. Don't just bash them over the head with a sales pitch that's just, like you said, 1 paragraph long and a calendar link.
Yeah, it's crazy when I get those, and I always try to connect with people on LinkedIn, but it's exactly right. You connect, they become a connection with you, and then you leave them alone for a while. But then you just send out content, and then all of a sudden, then you reach out and they'll say, "Oh yeah, I've seen a couple of your videos. What's up?" It's now their own. It's weird. It's like you met them at a bar and they're like, "Hey, how you doing?" Because we're a connection. If you did that without being a connection, you would walk away immediately. So,
100%. I mean, I can tell you, there's times when I'd go into, I'm actually walking deals, and people, they know me and they say, "Hey, I know that guy," and I'm like, "Oh yeah, hey, how are you?" I don't really know them. They know me. I'm like, "I'm sorry, I don't know who you are. I'm sorry about that." It's because they feel like they know me. They already have a relationship with me, and I love it. I think it's great. That means that the message is getting out. I'm creating value for someone else, and you know what? Maybe they'll invest. Maybe they won't. Doesn't matter. I'm helping someone, and maybe it'll come back. That's fine with me. And
that's how you got to look at it. You're just helping people, and again, the sales will come if you don't think about the sales.
Yeah.
100%. And do I have a minute to go through that perception story?
No, please. No, do it.
Yeah. So perception, you get the term perception's everything. And it's such a true thing, but here's the thing. You have to be perceived as the expert at what you want to do, whether you are or not. Now, obviously everyone is an expert at something, or they're trying to be an expert at something, but don't be perceived as just the other guy. Like there's a million other of Agostinos out there. There's not. There's you. You're the expert. But there's ways to do that with your title, with how you set up your LinkedIn profile. I see so many LinkedIn profiles that says sales representative. Ooh, I'm going to do business with you. You just zero distinction there of what you do or being an expert at anything. So here's a story about how being an expert from a perception standpoint really hits home. So one of my favorite studies, I'm a big fan of Robert Cialdini. He's the perception and influence doctor guy. He's done a million studies, but one of my favorite ones that he cites is in England, they wanted to test this theory about perception and being the expert. So they had the same guy give a talk, the same exact talk, in 5 different college classrooms. Same exact classroom, same class, same guy. But what they did was, For every class, they changed his title. So for the first class, he was a student. The second class, he was a student assistant. Third class, he was a graduate assistant. Fourth, he was an assistant professor. And finally, the fifth class, he was like a tenured professor or a department head, something like that. But his stature and title rose in each of the classes. They then surveyed the students as they exited the classroom on a piece of paper. They asked them two questions. One, how was the talk? And two, how tall do you think the presenter was? As you went from the student presenter to the department head presenter, they said talk was average, department head presenter talk was excellent, but here's the kicker. He rose in height, in perceived height, 2.5 inches. So the first class perceived him at 5'6". The last class perceived him at 5'8.5". Same guy, same outfit, same talk, same class. He only changed his title, and that was it. And the title change gave him, everyone in the classroom perceived him as an expert, not only as an expert, but he gave a better talk, and he was taller. That blew me away when I read that. So that's how important perception is in how you present yourself.
Status is super important, right?
Yes.
That's the key. That's the key. And I think it's another thing too, is that people actually want to, people buy status as well, right? They'll buy the Louis Vuitton, the Gucci, all that, because it's like a status symbol. They buy the fancy car, it's a status symbol. That's what people are buying as well. Yeah.
But let's say I have this in my book. Let's say you want to buy a lampshade and you got two business cards in front of you. You got lampshade consultant, Joe lampshade consultant, and Pete senior lampshade consultant. Who are you going to buy the lampshade from?
Oh, I got to talk to the senior guy. I mean, he
clearly
knows more. Yeah.
He clearly knows more. He might be there 2 years. The other guy might be there 10. You're buying the lampshade from the senior guy simply because he put that one word in there.
Now, how do you use that then? The perception thing. Let's say you're going to go raise money and you're calling on someone, or maybe they're calling on you, or maybe it's a LinkedIn thing. Your LinkedIn title. How do you delineate yourself against the other multifamily investors that are out there? Like, what would you put? You can't put senior multifamily investor, right? What would you put?
Experienced multifamily. You want to put a lot of things. You want to have your legitimacy there. So you want to put your experience. How many years you've been doing this, or when I help people design websites and they've sold 5,000 products, you put that, sold 5,000 products, just to give them some meat as far as, oh, wow, these people know what they're doing. They've helped 450 clients realize their dream of owning a multifamily thing. It also comes back to the feeling that you want the person to get when they're reading your profile. You want the feeling to be that you're going to help them. It's not about you. That's a key. You want everything to make them, when I look at their profile, I want to feel like they're going to help me. They're not just broadcasting a nice billboard about themselves. Because as soon as I see people just talking about themselves, I'm not interested, because I know that they're not interested in me. They're interested in making their own money.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it comes back to the feeling of what you're going to get when you read that.
That's right. Well, and part of it is also using that sounds to me like cognitive biases, understanding the cognitive biases and applying the right cognitive biases to, and this is not manipulation, by the way, guys, for anyone.
No, it's not unethical whatsoever.
Yeah. It's not unethical, not manipulation, anything else like that, but it's really understanding the human element and what's important to them to help them achieve their goal. And just like you said, Allan, it's one of those things that if I put front and center, we helped 100 people get into their first multifamily deal. Great. So if they helped 100 people, maybe I can be 101.
Right. Exactly.
That's a social proof, right? And they scroll down, they'll see the testimonials. Yes, Agostino helped us get into a multifamily deal, or we invested with Agostino. He's great, or whatever. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So those are things you have to convey on your marketing, but I guess it sounds to me like you first have to open up in the sales process, right? When you're talking to them on the sales side, and really either leading them to your marketing or vice versa, or how do you see that happening?
Yeah. You can't lead with what you sell. You got to lead with how you're going to help them. You can't just call up and say, hey, I sell copy machines and I have a deal this week. It's a dime a dozen. Everybody does that. But if you call up and say, hey, I can help your office produce 50% more copies at less money, from an office cost standpoint, you're solving a problem for them right away, and you're telling them right away how you can help them, rather than saying, hey, I sell copy machines. here's the thing that the other thing I want you to remember, and this can be applied to any sales situation, is what's the famous quote? A customer will never remember what you said or what you showed them. They'll always remember how you made them feel. That's not the exact quote, but
it's Maya Angelou.
Maya Angelou, right? Exactly.
Yeah.
You want to convey to the customer. You want to let them know how they're going to feel, whether after they either buy your product or service or after they do business with you. They need to know how that's going to feel. And here's a great example. This just happened to me about 3 weeks ago. I needed to order oil for my house. I don't have an automatic delivery, so I was going to click on the normal guy I use, but for some reason I did a search, and this one oil company said, "The company that keeps you warm." And I was like, oh, that just made me feel so good. Their oil was actually, I don't know, 5 cents more a gallon, but I bought oil from them because they made me feel how I was going to feel after I purchased. I mean, talk about a commodity. It's just oil. Everyone just shops prices, but they figured out a way to use one sentence to let me know how I would feel after I bought their product. So that's what your guys should focus on as well. People who are listening to this, think about your customer, think about who you're speaking to, and think about how they would feel after they do business with you, and then try to convey that.
Now, you know what, there was something else though too. If that current guy that you bought the oil from, if he were to maintain a relationship with you, if he would have sent off, say, a biweekly newsletter about the price of oil or how to maintain your heating system or whatever the case may be, chances are you would have bought from him because the reciprocity bias, right? That he's
Correct.
giving you things, and maybe he'll come back to you, right? I would imagine.
Well, there would be no reason for me to do a search.
Yeah,
I literally did a search to say, oh, I wonder if I can get oil cheaper. That's all it was. It was like, can I get my oil cheaper because oil prices are down? And then I saw this one company, and I actually spent about the same I would have spent on the other guy, or maybe it was a little more, but it was all about the feeling. Like this company just felt better. They just did by that one sentence. And since then, to your point, I did get an email asking me how my experience was with them. So looks like I got an oil company at this point, because now there's no need for me to search because I feel really good about them. And that's how your customers should need to feel about you all the time. Yeah.
All right, Allan. Well, so now what's next? What do you have planned for the next round? So you got that excellent book out. So what's after this one? So,
I mean, we chatted offline. I'm definitely starting a podcast, hopefully relatively soon. I need to find a fancy mic like you have right there. And, but I've been kicking around, there's, as I go through and train people, there's so many books that pop in my head, or there's so many chapters in books that I want to write about. So there'll be another book down the pipe. Nothing has started yet, but there's a rough outline for one. And, it might be like one of the chapters in my book is about body language, and obviously paying attention to body language when you're in a sales situation. And it always blew me away that it's very, very hard to find body language sales training. You can find sales training anywhere. You find a million sales training courses. Very hard to find one on body language, like what to actually look for when you're talking to someone. So I did a whole chapter on that. I'm actually thinking of maybe doing a book on the whole thing of body language and sales, because I think it's one of the most ignored aspects of face-to-face selling is body language. I did a whole blog on body language over a Zoom call. Like we don't have the whole body to look at anymore. We've got shoulders up. We've got face and hands, and maybe you don't even have my hands right here. You just have my shoulder and my face. So there's a way to look at body language that way. So it's huge. So anyway, a lot of things on the burners right now. So we'll see what happens.
No, I love that. There's actually an instance where I was talking to a potential investor. They said they wanted to invest. And so I said, okay, great. Well, the minimum amount is X. It doesn't matter. I was watching him as I said the number, and I saw his lips and the corners of his mouth pursed back just ever so slightly. Is a micro expression, right? So that's just one of the, when you're looking at body language, micro expression was one of those things. And I caught it. And at that point I knew, before I could finish my sentence, I knew he was not going to invest, right? I already knew before I finished the sentence, I knew, right? And it's okay. It's not, it doesn't make the guy a bad guy, but you want to understand who's really going to invest with you and partner up with you on a deal and who's not. It's reading body language is absolutely huge. Oh yeah. I can't wait to see that stuff, man. It's going to be awesome.
And that pursed lips that I have a section in my book about pursed lips. I did a video on it. It's a micro expression, like you said, but it is so critical. You'll lose a deal if you don't pay attention, if you don't see that. If so many reps are like plowing through, like if they have a commitment, they start plowing through, and in the middle of the commitment, they get a pursed lips. That's a canceled deal the next day. You did something, you said something, you showed them something that made them slightly uncomfortable. They're not going to tell you what it was. They're just going to be cordial and let you go through it. And then either it's not a deal at the end of the meeting, or it's a canceled sale the next day. So many reps don't pay attention to those expressions, to what they're doing with their legs and their hands, and they're turning away, and all that stuff is huge tells on how you're doing in front of this customer or potential customer. Yeah. So pursed lips is a huge one.
I love this stuff, man.
Yeah, me too.
All right, guys. If you want to reach out to Allan, you can reach him via his company website, allanger.com. I hope you got a lot of great insight on the sales process, and some of the other cognitive biases to be aware of. Okay. So thanks very much for tuning in. I will see you on the next episode.
Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed the Bulletproof Cashflow podcast.